Your car got totaled, you say. Want to go more into that?
Man, I had a car for about 7 years. It was a gift from my father. I had all intentions on like giving it to my son whenever I had one, but he was gonna get it. And it was just coming at a time, man, where I felt like everything was going well. Things were going well at the office, and I was getting ready to pay off a good portion of debt that evening, and it's almost as if the worst thing that could have happened. So it set me back pretty far, man. I was supposed to be in London this week, and I had to cancel that trip because I'm probably got to buy a new car. But yeah, like I was saying before, man, I just felt like it was key to having some gratitude for some small things in my life that I feel like I may have overlooked given not having that accident, man. So yeah, man. It losing that taught me gratitude in the small things.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate.
It is. Um, but in a way, it's an omen, right? Since we're talking about the alchemist,
Mhm.
it's an omen for new things, or for whatever you feel like the omen is for, I guess. However you see it.
Would you say you've had some omens recently in
Uh,
your life?
they're constant.
Oh, okay.
They're overbearing and everywhere.
You probably have some great stories too, man. I was just thinking about there's so much like musicality in your name. I was
Oh.
like, this is a deep brother. I already know it.
Thank you.
So I know you got some stories, man. Please tell me and the folks about the omens, man. I'm curious.
I have to ask you first, what constitutes an omen to you?
Ooh. Um, I always look at it as some type of indicator that may or may not make sense, that seems to even exceed our understandings, that let us know, or it becomes a precursor to what may or may
Oh,
be happening, may or may not be happening. I'd say that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
was that an omen? Dropping the mic?
You know what? I ain't going. I'm not going to take it as much.
Also, yeah, I did notice
It's
when
an honor
you.
for me to hold this microphone.
It's perfect because it was exactly what I was thinking. I don't even have to say it anymore, but I'm going to, just to showcase people omens happening in real fucking time. When you speak above the mic, that's when you get the static. When you speak
Okay,
directly into the mic, that doesn't happen. So we found it. We
perfect.
found the culprit.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect.
so an event which doesn't constitute any understanding, something along those lines. You said,
Hmm.
which may or may not serve us in the future.
Yep,
Do you think an omen is the universe telegraphing something to us?
I would agree with that. I would.
Yeah, that makes sense. I when I think omens, I think synchronicity. So I wanted to hear your take on it before showcasing stories. Man, synchronicity truly is everywhere in my life. Um, I started working on my intuition since I was in high school, and since then, like the better I got at it, just the world exploded around me.
Hmm.
And just it's become such a thing. I don't really even keep track of them. I just smile at most of them, and I just keep doing my thing. I mean, everything is so from the gut instinct thing that when I moved to Sweden, for example, I was like, I need to move here, work with my co-developer on this game, do it here in person. I need some change in my life. I get the ticket, I get everything. My plane even gets delayed a few days, and I not nothing bad with that. I jump on the plane a few days later, leave. Like the next week, it was like Thursday or something that I left, and the next week, Monday, Romania was just pummeled by COVID. Like
Wow.
I left on that plane with like COVID on my tail. It's like just dodge the tsunami basically. So that's something in recent memory that's like, yeah, that was definitely some omens in there.
Video game. Wait, tell me more about those, man. Funny enough, I used to believe that. I knew for sure that I was going to be an architect of video games, more so the worlds and the concepts.
Okay.
And it's something I've always like had a love for. How'd you get into making video games, man? That is
You
dope.
just download the correct programs and start working. That's how you get into video games. Exactly how you started this podcast stuff is exactly how you start video games. You just fucking do
Wow.
it.
You have a favorite
Oh, I have
if you can
tons.
look back. All right, pick your top three. Pick your top three.
Top three, easy. PS2 games. Onimusha,
Okay.
Dawn of Dreams. That's one of them. Ace Combat, The Balkan War. That's another
Oh,
one.
okay.
And Ratchet and Clank 3. That was my
Oh, come
first
on,
ever video game.
Ratchet and Clank. That is uh the precursor to all those platform games, I feel like.
Oh yeah. Well, there was stuff before it, but it definitely like set some standards on how to do things. So it was also my first real video game, like the first proper controller in hand, you know. Before
Okay.
that it was Ski Free and Asteroids and whatever else, you know, those smaller games from back in the day. The first
Yeah.
full-fledged thing in my hands was Ratchet and Clank 3, and of course that took over my soul. Became part of my spirit easily. Ace Combat The Balkan War is a game about planes, and it has the best story I have ever seen in a piece of media.
Okay.
It's one of those games that it might be like just this is just weird planes at first. So you like give it a bit of time, let it win you over, you know, and it will deliver. It's you will look back at that game like, holy fucking shit, wild. You'd never expect that in a plane game. The stuff they do in there. And Onimusha Dawn of Dreams is good old action video game, action RPG with samurais and stuff. It's
Oh, I
the
felt like I
fourth.
played that too.
It's the fourth game in the Onimusha series, so there's been around. There's some around. You might have played
And
at least one of them.
he has like a red garb, right?
Some of them do, yeah.
I feel
there's
like
there's there's characters in there with red garbs. There's a dude with a spear called Tenkai that has red armor.
yes. That
No
was one of
way.
the that was the introduction to action RPGs for me with PS2s. I
Oh
fell in love with
my
them shortly
god.
afterwards.
It's
Like
like
after I'm talking about all, and then I went to the full Japanese RPG routes. Those are some of my favorites, man.
oh man.
Still my favorites, actually. Those are actually the
I
only games
can't
I still
believe you
play.
played that. That's
It's a
wild.
small world, man. It's a small world.
It is nobody fucking plays like Ratchet and Clank will sometimes be on the more popular side. Like people will be like, oh yeah, I know Ratchet and Clank. The other two is like, nah, I never heard of it in my life. It's like, oh, you played Onimusha, okay, we're brothers now.
I think I held on to that actual disc until I got an Xbox. So I had it
Wow,
for I think I just recently got rid of maybe like 4 or 5 years ago when I moved. But yeah, man, it was a gem. I held on to it.
good,
Man, yes, yeah, we're brothers. Call it what it is.
dude. The way I invite people to the Thought Pantheon is purely like everything else I do, instinctual. I don't remember what it was even on Instagram. I think it was a story or a post you put. And I've been following you for so long. I don't even remember how I started following you years ago
Wow.
on
Really?
Instagram.
I didn't know that. It's a small world. And that's what I love about Instagram too, man. I feel like it really just exposes you to people you may not run into that you can have more in common with than the
Yes.
people next door. You know, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
There's some good things if you know how to use it. Mostly, social media can be not the healthiest thing, but if you know how to get around with the bullshit, it can be so beneficial.
Mm.
It's precisely for what you just said. So, yeah, so it was a story or a post or something that you said, and it just like ignited that instinct. I'm like, him, he needs to be a top Pantheon. And I just shot you a DM, bam, and now we're here.
I'm an open book, man. I'm really excited to see some of the like what we're going to continue to talk about. Definitely been looking forward to this all last month.
Same. It's like from the moment that thing ignites, as there's been a lot of people who said no, I'm not interested. And it's like, okay, it's not time for that, or it's not the perfect thing. So it starts from the instinct, but then like the omens, right? The synchronicity happens, and it's like it's always like the perfect person in front of me
Mhm.
at that time of my life, and sometimes of even of their lives. Um, what I would like to know is you've learned gratefulness through this event with the car,
Mhm.
right? You've learned gratitude for those things. I'm curious, what were you like before that, and how does that
Oh
contrast,
man.
that change?
I will probably say if I can remember back maybe like a few weeks before that incident, I think I was just completely focused on working on the things that I want to leave behind, the things that are going to outlive me. And I think I had such an obsession towards those things that it just made me put everything else to the back burner. I was just
Mm.
focusing on like the things that I knew that would excite my soul. There's a guy named Howard Thurman. He's a contemplative Christian. Most people call him a mystic. He kind of cites this guy named Meister Eckhart from the 13th century a lot, and
Mm.
Leo Tolstoy, some of his inspirations. But he talks about how the world needs more people that have come alive,
Mm.
and he always talks about how you have to do what feeds your soul. And I felt like I was in that realm. You know what I'm saying? I was really focused on that, but I ended up neglecting the things that make life grand, like spending time with your partner, spending time with family. And it's funny when we're talking about the alchemist, reminds me back in that scene where he's carrying the egg through the palace and he's trying to find those, that medium between focusing on the egg and paying attention to everything that's around him. And I felt like I was focused completely on the destination I was headed in, not the things around me. And it was a big wake up call. Big wake up call.
Oh man, I feel it in my chest. I've I'd say I was just recently been reminded of the same things. I've uh I've visited my family back in Romania just a few weeks ago before I headed into Norway. And yeah, seeing them again and seeing what I grew up again from the lens of I've been away for many years in a completely different country culturally and everything, doing completely different things, is it reminded me of what's important, the people around you, the warmth, the amazing food that they make.
I haven't had
uh
Romania food yet, but I'm pretty sure it's great.
we got to get you some. It's incredible. It's ointment for the soul.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That
And then
sounds like that needs to be coined to some type of trademark or something, man. That sounds good.
Romania, ointment for the soul. um and then coming back is so interesting because leaving these habits here in this place behind for a period of time, going somewhere else, going back somewhere familiar, then going someplace completely new and learning new things from all of those experiences. You come back to these, at this point, old habits, because I've been here for like a year and something. um and you look around, you're like, oh man, I don't like most of these. Time to make a change. It's like it gives you the clarity to see the whole picture of what you were doing and make give you the choice of how you want to move forward. And that's so beautiful. What do you think
Well
about that?
put, man. That well put. When you say habits, the first thing I thought about is James Clear's Atomic Habits, and he talks about how your environments have more influence on your habits than anything else. And I was thinking about what you may have been going through to go back to old habits and then to come back to where you are now to realize, yo, this is not going to work. It makes me man, we just gotta be so intentional with like some of those things, man.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad you didn't find out too late.
Oh yeah. No. My life seems to have the habit of getting me out of the way of something shitty, like frame perfect
There goes
before it
your omen.
happens. And this makes me think of the thing you said in one of your last reels on Instagram about the sidestepping thing. Would you like to go into that? Because I think that's super
Oh,
interesting.
I think
The
okay. The
comfort
post
zone
I
stuff.
think said, and for those who may not know, I find opportunities to mend like visual poetry and quotes and philosophy and theory and storytelling and like these little excerpts that I want people to feel like, it's easy to gain and pull away without necessarily, reading a long caption. But I think the post was really, let me see if I can remember it. It said, if you find yourself habitually making lateral steps, you are not moving forward. You have found a crutch for comfort. Take some risk, make some exaggerated steps forward, or you may never reach your goal. You can fail at what you don't want just the same. And I always think about that. And shameless plug, that last excerpt is in my first book I published, self-published. Actually, it doesn't matter if it's self-published, it's published.
It's out there. People can experience
it. It's out there. Yeah, man, it's
What's the
out
name?
there. It's called Reveals of the Soul. It follows this antagonist or protagonist, depending on how you look at it, who suffers a great loss, and he finds himself as well as the things that he wants to leave behind in dialogue with God and within himself too. And I realized that you can fail at what you don't want just the same. I think that oftentimes it is easy for us to not hope or desire things that we really want because they're always posed against us not getting them, the disappointment of not getting them. And that disappointment stops people from hoping. And I feel like I was one of those people. And I felt like I learned that lesson specifically so I could tell it to other people. And I think that's what it's about. It's about taking risks. It's about moving forward, getting out of these things that you may have considered as progress so you can actually make progress. Because you can fail doing what you're doing now as opposed to if you were actually taking steps forward.
Yeah. The other podcast I do with my two fitness instructor friends, Chase and Mitch, called Leave Feeling Better. We talked about this recently. Chase says, like, whether you keep doing the thing or you move towards something else that you actually want to do, they're both painful. So it's like it's selecting the type of pain you want to experience. Yeah, that's
selecting the type of pain you want to experience.
And some pain is going to move you forward.
It sounds easy when you put it that way, but when you get into, like we were talking about the habits, when you can literally choose one or the other, each one is going to have some type of pain associated with it. It seems a lot easier to choose the easy thing, in those moments, man. But you're right.
Pain you're used to, right? The comfortable pain.
That's good. Talk about that one, man. That's good. That's the pain that we're used to.
It goes in. I think it goes a bit intertwined with the habits. Is the thing that it boils down to, I think, is awareness. It's noticing what the hell you're doing. It's so easy to get lost in what you're doing without even realizing it. We've all been there. We're going to continue being there until maybe we reach some sort of grand, I don't know, awakening or something. I don't give a shit, whatever, right? It's like this is natural part of how we do things within this system, at least. Maybe in another system that would happen less. I don't know. But yeah, it's if you don't bring awareness into it, I think if you don't have awareness as a fundamental, then pretty much all types of pain are going to be irrelevant in the end. And that sounds like an absolute, and I don't mean that in that way. But what good is experiencing pain if you're not choosing what you're doing, right?
Oh man, that is good. Oh man, that is good. No man, that's good. What is the point of experiencing that pain and you're not choosing what you get from it?
Yeah. And then you can go into the Bhagavad Gita stuff where like you have which I haven't read it, so I don't relate a lot to these concepts, but I keep hearing them being said by people who know their shit. And one of the concepts in there is you have the rights to the action, but not to the reward, right? So if you want to go even deeper in that, and what I just said is, at least with awareness, you're able to select the type of painful action you're going to undertake, even without thinking about the reward.
Yeah.
So it all starts from that breath, from that noticing, from that shit Eckhart Tolle talks about. From yesterday, I stumbled upon fucking, I don't remember what his first name was, but his last name is Silva, I think. And he wrote some books in the 90s about
Yeah,
intuition.
the Silver Method. He
Yeah,
coined the Silver Method
yeah.
for, I think it's like, manifestation
It's
and
intuition, basically.
yeah, intuition, yeah.
It's exercises for intuition and taking control of different states of your brain, like alpha, beta, theta, delta, all those things. And it has to do with like, doing stuff around falling asleep and waking up. That's shit I've been doing since high school on my own, sitting down, meditating, trying to be aware of what the hell's happening in my body. The story is quite funny. I will share it. A lot of people already know it, but I'll share it with you briefly. When I was in high school and hanging out with people around me, I always knew the location of everyone around me without even looking for them. And
Oh wow.
I thought that was just something normal that people just experience. Everybody just feels the presence of people around them, right? Like I know my mom's here, I know my friends here, I know that other friends here. And like you just in every situation, you kind of know where people are around you physically. And I had this one friend that I would walk besides him on the street, and sometimes you turn around and you go on the other side because logistics. Maybe you need to avoid a person or something. And he would always like look for me and then look the other side and get scared. It's like, when the fuck did you move on the other side? I'm like, do you not feel when I move around you? He's like, no. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, what are you talking about?
So
And
that's when you found out that people don't have the same sense that you had. That's when you
yes.
found out.
And I didn't stop there. I went and asked fucking everyone I knew. It's like, hey, do you feel people around you? And most people were like, no. Actually, at that time, everybody said no. And the more I started practicing this shit, the more I started meeting people who do.
Oh, how did you practice it? And then how do you feel when when you can feel those people around you? Like, what does that feel like?
It's it's like if I take a heater, right, in my hand and move it around you, you'll feel the heat of it emanate, right? You'll it's I feel it physically like that. It's like I feel a presence. I feel something emanating from the person around me, and everybody has unique fucking emanation. That's a new word now.
Wow.
Emanation, the act of emanating. Thank you, Merriam-Webster. Put that out there. That's how I experience it. And the way I practiced it was I just tuned into that. I just focused on that feeling. Didn't judge it, didn't think of it as anyone. I was like, man, if I can be one of them X-Men, I'm gonna can't webcam. If I can be one of them X-Men, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna shoot fireballs from my hand. I don't care. Right? I was like, whatever it takes, I'm gonna figure out whatever this is. And then I started realizing, identifying what is in me the voice of like conditioning, right? Resistance, all of those things, like the stuff Stephen Pressfield talks about. These were things I didn't even know at the time. I wasn't reading books. I wasn't doing anything. I was just doing it on my own. A freaking 14-year-old, 15-year? No, wait. It was 17-year-old, something like that, many years ago. And identifying what is the voice of conditioning and identifying what is the voice of instinct. And I realized just how stifled and quiet and far away the voice of instinct was. So I started just kind of like ignoring the loud voice of conditioning, of fear, of fight or flight, of all these things, right? You should do this, you shouldn't do that, everything you're told. And started listening to that like, hey, over here voice, go left on this street, just trust me, bro. And I just started listening to that voice, and it started becoming louder and louder and louder until they kind of equaled. And that's when it got tricky. When they were equal, I couldn't tell them apart anymore.
Wow.
So I had to like get better at identifying what is actually good for me. And taking the action. If like someone needs something in the moment, if I need something in the moment, going again, taking a left on this street and then meeting someone new, it's just omens, right? And just kept practicing that. Then I got into self-development, studied some amazing mentors like what's his name, Owen Tyler. I don't know if you know him. Owen Cook,
No, I'm
actually,
familiar
I
with
think
him.
his name. And just learn some of that. Then I studied Jacques Fresco, which created the Venus Project. I super invite you to look into that. I always tell everybody about it. Okay. And he talks about that thing you said, environment shapes us. He talks about a lot of like social engineering and like how people behave and how you can motivate. Like just this man lived like 100 years, 104 years, died recently in 2014 or 15. Saw all the world wars, saw like all this shit, and really studied people and really studied everything we had in place. He came to the conclusion that we should just get rid of money and just use the resources we have without this middleman of money, and just give everything, like, well, use the resources in a smart way and stuff like that. But I'm going to keep it on the philosophy side. That's super interesting too. I super support that, but to keep it pertinent, I studied that stuff, and that taught me so much. And then I started looking into psychology and all these things, and it started piling up, right? So it all started with, I guess, accepting that there's something there, sitting with it, becoming aware of it, becoming more aware of it, and from there, eventually leading into actual knowledge. And at this point, I still look around everywhere. I look at everything everybody has to say. There's always some nugget of something. Hell, found like literally a sponsored ad on Instagram last night talking about the Silva method. And I'm like, I've been doing this for almost a decade now. And now you're telling me people actually know about this too. And there's exercises I could do to take it to the next level. It's like, oh, it's fantastic.
It's nothing new under the sun.
And that's great because it means there's a lot of knowledge.
Yep. So what advice would you give to someone who's also trying to differentiate those two voices? You know, the one that is conditioning, the one that is instinct. I like that. I like that nomenclature you use. I like that.
Yeah.
How would you help?
Become aware of your ego is something I wish I knew back then. There is an amazing video on YouTube from a channel called healthygamer.gg. That is a psychologist, psychiatrist, Dr. K, his name is Indian. And it is called, Can We Have a Healthy Ego? He talks about what ego is and why it does what it does, and why it's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of managing it. Within it, there's also a meditation. I do that pretty much every day. And so realizing that your ego is not your whole reality, it's like 10% of you. And then there's like this expansive being of consciousness that is your true self. It helped me. It's one of the most helpful things I've done in life. And I've recently learned this, like this year. So do that. The second one is obviously identifying what conditioning is within you, because it's not going to be a voice for everybody. It's going to be something else. It's going to be thought. It's like everybody experiences their own internal engines so differently. So putting that in a personal vocabulary of what's what helps a lot. How do you do that? Sit the fuck down every day and just sit with yourself. You're a person like, just like how you would sit with a friend and listening to their bullshit for like 15 minutes or longer or however. Sit with yourself and listen to your own bullshit and just listen. Like, again, hang out with yourself like you would with another person. That helped me a lot as well. And then those are fundamental. Understand the ego, understand yourself, explore yourself, treat yourself well.
That's good.
And just keep learning things. Keep learning things you're interested in. That will teach you more about yourself than if you're just like reading all the books people tell you to and all these things. It's hard to get me to read a book. It's like the universe has to keep recommending it to me for a long time for me to be like, oh, I get it, fine, this book's for me. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, you can also study him, has amazing stuff. Just kept everywhere in my life, just constantly like, hey, Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, really good book. It's several people, different places. And I'm like, I already know all of these things that I've learned through like studying people who have read the book and them teaching that, and like secondhand kind of like know everything. So I don't feel I need to read the book. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go get it anyway. So I buy it, I leave it in the house. My mom starts reading it. changes her whole fucking life. The book
Wow.
wasn't for me. I was just the messenger to it, right?
But
And
you listen though,
yeah,
which allowed you.
listening
Yep.
is listening is the best skill people can practice. Hey, listeners, do you want one thing to work on every day? Learn how to listen better.
That's
That's it.
good.
That's it.
Good.
That was a good question. It got me on
Yeah, man. I
it
was
got
just
me to
thinking about.
go.
I was just thinking about. Yeah, man. That is. I feel like it helps us in all types of like relationships with people, like listening. But I'll go on a tangent. So we already talked about some of the other stuff offline. So I ain't gonna not gonna get into that.
Yes, you share only whatever you wish to share.
Okay. Ooh, man. I'll let you keep running the show, man. Go ahead, do your thing.
So you said you were obsessed with getting to the destination, right? Now, undoubtedly, you are still doing poetry and modeling and all these things you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the journey towards this obsessive uh, finish line, right?
Mm-hmm.
How how has that changed since this car stuff? Like, because you're still using these creative tools, you're still doing them. Do you find yourself approaching them in a different way now?
Oh, definitely, man. I think it's like an urgency. And I was already urgent before. Trust me. The people around me will always I move with a sense of urgency. I think it is arrogant to think that you have more time to bring the things out of you that have been specifically given to you to bring into the world. I think it's arrogant. But for me, just made me realize how finite things are in that I got to start pulling the trigger on some of this stuff, some of these ideas, some of these, whether it's a book, whether it is creating a podcast, whether it's like starting an event. I just had to pull the trigger on some of that stuff. And I think this was actually like a one of those things where, you know, we can get if you listen to any great person, they still deal with these feelings of inadequacy. And I think this was like a great example of trying to step into a new territory. So mind you guys, me and Oath Gang, we didn't this is our first meeting. This is our
Yes.
first so there's a fear of that, discussing something, these topics where someone you may not have known yet. And there was a leaping that had to happen with that. And um, yeah, man, I realized I just got to take a leap.
Yeah.
I have to take a leap.
That's a quality of everybody that has been on Todd Pantheon so far, and I think it will continue to be a trait of that because I don't really sit down to like get to know them before, because the big thing in this is being able to take that leap, right? If they want to, sure, I'll sit down, but like, it's like, oh, let's get to know each other for 3 years before we do a podcast. Like, that's not gonna happen. I'm gonna find other
Not gonna
people in that
happen.
time.
We don't got that time.
Yeah, no. So that courage is beautiful, and you absolutely have it in you. There was something else I had in mind, but I forgot. So I got lost in the courage.
I
Oh,
got a story.
right.
Go ahead.
What I thought of was authenticity, as defined by Gabor Mate, another person everybody should study, um, is the capacity to be vulnerable. And I tell that to myself every day. And I remind myself that, it's okay to be vulnerable, because authenticity is what the world craves the most right now. It's like a person starved for protein, and authenticity is the protein, and the person's the world.
Wow, that's good. What else does he say about authenticity?
That's about the
Dive
only thing I
into.
heard. Talks a lot
Yeah.
about addiction and a lot about the world, and he knows his stuff. He's a doctor. He works with addicts. Is his whole thing. He has some amazing books. He's been on amazing podcasts. Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, and this more mainstream guy that I forget the name of. But if you search Gabor Mate, you'll find him
Okay.
on everything he's done recently.
So there's vulnerability is completely attached to authenticity.
Based on that definition, I would say so. I have not thought
Okay.
about that, actually. What do you think?
You know what? Yeah, if we're talking about the leap, we're talking about courage and authenticity and vulnerability. There's actually a chapter in my book where it's called Gelassenheit and the Leap. So Gelassenheit is a Heideggerian hermeneutical term, which really just means uh, it's a Heideggerian definition from Martin Heidegger, but it's borrowed from Christian mysticism. And I think the first time you actually hear that word is through Meister Eckhart in the 13th century. But it talks about having a disposition of ease to that which is uncertain. And when I think about the leap, it's not necessarily like it's not necessarily I'm leaping to do this because I know the outcome. It's almost as if I have a disposition of ease, or I am okay with the unaware and I still leap. And I feel like it takes a certain vulnerability to do that, to be able to leap into something not knowing the outcome. And we were talking about this term Gelassenheit, and it's something that cannot be gained in ignorance, as if you don't know the risk of something, and that's why you have an ease to it. And mind you, even just this term in itself is something I found in the process of like just trying to research some of these complex topics of being and metaphysics and ontology, which, always tends to leave Black folks out of it, but that's a whole nother conversation.
That's definitely a conversation I want to hear at some point. Maybe on your podcast.
Man, that's a whole. Oh man, that's that. Yeah, maybe we could get into that, but it talks about how it's a disposition of ease with that leap, and I think it specifically speaks to vulnerability and authenticity. And I feel like there's an aspect of us that has to be vulnerable to really be authentic, to not, because I think it means to be vulnerable knowing the outcome isn't necessarily being vulnerable. It's a calculated decision. I think the vulnerability becomes vulnerability once we are unaware of the outcome of our actions, like you said prior. And yeah, man, I think we cannot be authentic without being vulnerable. Just the same as we cannot take a leap.
Without a little bit of faith.
Yep. Way to finish the sentence, man.
Perfect. Consider this. You have been in your modeling career and everything else, and also living in America, but that's everywhere. I'm sure you have dealt with plenty of suspicious businessmen, as have I in the gaming industry, because it's all the fucking same. It's all the same trash everywhere. And you notice that in the business world, authenticity doesn't exist. There is no capacity for authenticity there because nobody is willing to be vulnerable. Right?
Okay.
Would you agree with that? Like nobody allows themselves to be vulnerable because they would get hurt by others.
And yeah, I do agree with that. Did you want me to comment, or are you going to finish?
Go ahead. That's all.
No, I think when we think about business, I think we can't separate the capitalism, the imperialism that are also associated with those. Those systems are associated with those. And within those systems, you cannot be vulnerable without what's the word I'm looking for? You cannot be vulnerable in those systems and expect to be untouched, or expect to leave to become unscathed after being vulnerable in those situations. Specifically, capitalism deals with someone having to be at a loss for someone else to win. In the layman sense with capitalism, because we can get into that too.
Well,
we don't got to get into that. We don't got to.
We do not.
But yeah, I think it's because of those systems are set up within business, specifically what we see business today, that it makes it almost impossible. Well, who would want to be vulnerable when there's going to be a loss by choosing to be vulnerable? That is going to be an outcome, being vulnerable in business.
That is an outcome you can be certain of.
Exactly. It takes no courage for that. Yeah. So who's going to choose to do that? Who's going to choose to be vulnerable in those situations? But I completely agree. There is no vulnerability.
I don't know any businessman that has become top class by being courageous. I'm sure they maybe exist out there, but I haven't seen them. It's always, dad had money or whatever, that kind of bullshit. Here's a recent thing that I learned to add to what you're saying. And I don't know if this is real or not. People just go look it up yourself. It could just be a meme, but I like it. and I consider it canon because I like fucking reticular activation system will work right there. Apparently, ferrets in Latin are called little thieves, and a group of ferrets is called a business. So business is thievery, which explains so much.
Somebody check that in the comments or something. Let us know, because
Yeah,
that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
world history
It's
is
funny
pretty
how
fun.
those little how the world gives us so many like truths and like these small little you know
It's
pockets of
everywhere.
information.
It's like breakfast. Break fast.
Yep.
It's everywhere in our language, but we're so used to it. So used to it
What
that we don't
what do
look
you
at it anymore.
normally what you normally eat for breakfast?
Today I had some chicken that my friend made because I did not want to stink myself up with the smoke because I always burn breakfast. I just don't
Oh,
have the
you can't
patience.
you can't cook, man. What?
No, I can cook. I don't have the patience for breakfast
Okay.
because I'm so hungry. I'm like, ah. And I've been burning this week's breakfast a bunch. So I was like, "Can you do it today? This is important." And he's like, "Okay." So I thank him for that. But what else? What have we been eating? This past week or so has been pork steak with uh fruit salad, but also some veggies in there. So like a salad with like orange and apple and zucchini and some rucola and some stuff like that. It's a lemon. So I eat whatever. I love food. I don't give a shit.
I was the reason why I asked you that is because I remember you were telling me that you've been doing more meditation, and I assume it probably happens in the morning. We're
I
talking
don't
about in
sleep.
terms
Yeah,
of really,
yeah. This has to be morning or before or after sleep, so that you go into that delta, those delta waves,
really
or theta at least. Yeah, that's the most effective.
before or after sleep. Okay.
It's like
Would you
like
say
when you're in
any of
that like
those?
half asleep state, that's when you should do it.
Okay. Would you say any of those things help you be comfortable with taking those leaps?
Yeah, it absolutely keeps fear at bay, or if you want to look at it a different way, invites courage into my being.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, there's that book called uh, I forget what it's called, Time for Courage or something like that. It's a
Okay.
pretty good book that people have
I hope y'all are
recommended.
writing some of this down because I am definitely writing these authors that I am
Oh,
unaware
Courage
of.
is Calling. That's what it's called.
Courage is
Chase and
calling.
Mitch have been telling me about that book for several months this year, and learning some of those quotes and some of those concepts through them has been very beneficial. But it literally is like, if I don't meditate, if I don't keep being aware and noticing myself and everything around me, I go into fear, I go into victim mentality, I go into being a piece of shit. It's not worth it. It never feels good. It's not like, it hurts our gift to the world. You know, what's the point of that? It's I try to be the best version I can be for Thought Pantheon for a reason. It's to show people that it's possible and to inspire that in them.
Yeah,
But
that's it, man.
when I'm not doing Thought Pantheon, man, I'm coming in and out of it. You
Really?
know, yeah, like we're all always gonna have shitty situations, right? We're all always gonna feel like shit some days, but it's about forgetting all the bullshit conditioning of like, oh, you shouldn't be sad. It's like, no, be sad and listen to yourself. Why are you sad? Like, what's going on? How can I help you, me, by listening to that sadness and just sitting with it?
There it is, folks. That conditioning's coming back. See, right? You just said it. How we have to listen to that conditioning that happens with us. You just said it.
Conditioning is a hell of a thing because it's not made to serve us in the current system. So we got to break out of it or be slaves to the system.
Yep.
Which, who the
Mm,
fuck wants to be that?
no, not here, not in
Not anyway.
Sweden, not in anywhere.
Oh yeah.
But we're all affected by it the same way. I'm curious about like how our lived experiences are different because we lived in different areas. What was like your childhood like?
I grew up on a farm, on a vegetable farm, but I grew up in absolutely crippling poverty where, hey, if we don't dig this hard sun scorched ground in the next 2 weeks to plant corn. We're not going to eat this winter.
Oh man.
So, yeah, 5-year-old me next to my grandma just shoveling away in the dirt was definitely an experience I do not regret having, because it definitely made me hard in that sense. Wouldn't do it again. But if I needed to, hey, if the zombie apocalypse breaks out, I know how to start a farm. So that's nice.
Which means you know how to survive.
Exactly. Had harsh winters, just like here in Sweden. It's funny to me. A lot of Swedish people are like, "Hey, look, snow, haha, first winter," and I'm like, "No, I grew up with this."
So this is not new for you. Okay.
um, what else? Yeah, religion was around. Eventually, I dropped that. When I grew up later, I was like, I got sick of the fasting shit. Like, I have a pizza in the fridge and I can't eat it today because God said so. Man, fuck this. And I ate that pizza. I was like, I'm gonna go do my own thing. God understands.
Hey, to each his own.
Yeah,
That's
for
how I'm
sure.
looking at it.
But my grandma was and still is very religious, so she had a lot of influence. What else? Got beaten all the time for the most redundant shit. Had good friends, like, oh, and the communism is what I was gonna go with. Communism ended in Romania in '89, so I was still
Mm.
feeling that momentum of it ending very
Oh
much
wow.
in everybody's hearts around me, and everybody, just because really, like, communism ended, but it ended because of capitalism coming in, and that didn't care about people either.
Yep.
So people were
It's
just
just
still
another
like kind
bad
of like,
system.
yeah, just gotta figure it out. And it was good. I'm really glad I was born in that time, because it allowed me to see that both of them fucking suck and we need something better. You hear so many people today, in America at least, I hear them. So, shout out to Americans, uh, being the way they are. Um, is like, capitalism sucks. Let's do communism. It's like, but it's not a binary choice. You can come up with whatever the fuck you want. It's not like Tetris. It's not. You don't have predetermined blocks in real life. You can make those blocks however you want.
Ooh, I think that's another conversation topic.
Oh, it
But
is.
I'll come back. Do you think things are predestined?
I don't know. Growing up, I always hated the idea of destiny. Growing up spiritually, I see it being more and more of a thing. So there's a lot of philosophies that have destiny as a fundamental thing to it, like the one of was it oneness, where we're all one, and your life and my life is experienced by the same being. So
Mm.
it's all just the same being interacting to each other with each other, and all the experiences are kind of predestined so that you learn how to be everything and eventually become God or whatever it is. So there's stuff like that out there, and they're beautiful. But personally, I feel like I don't want to believe that destiny is a thing, even though
Okay.
I don't really believe in free will either, because your environment defines you, and the best you can get is awareness to at least get a tiny bit of free will among the insane logistics that surround you in life. So I would say destiny exists to some degree, but at the same time, I would say destiny is of our own making, because we're fucking quantum wizards. We're fucking crazy ass beings that can visualize a thing and then bend reality to make it happen. And that has been proven to me by myself and others constantly in my life. So
Mm.
that's an undoubtable fact that requires, of course, a lot more research, so we understand it even better. So
Do any of these?
I
Oh, go
think you
ahead.
choose something in the way that you exist, and then, like in The Alchemist, the whole universe conspires for you to have that, and that then it starts feeling a bit predetermined. But I guess the answer is yes and no. It's a complex paradox of crazy, awe-inspiring bullshit that is really awesome. That's my answer.
I think I agree, man. I think it is both. I have a question. Do any of these topics, whether it's like destiny or aspects of your childhood, do they come out in the book that you wrote?
No, that is a fantasy book that I'm writing.
Really? What? And you don't think any of that comes up at all? Just for like
Oh,
not even directly or indirectly.
no. Subconsciously, we absolutely are the biggest paintbrush in everything we make. Like the canvas of our creativity, you put a part of yourself. In video games, this is tremendously clear. Everything, every character you make, every level design thing, every story point, every like in a game, it's so obvious that you're putting yourself in that. Like you're taking a part of yourself and putting it in this thing that then people are going to go experience for many hours. So yeah, absolutely, I'm putting parts of myself in that book. What parts? I don't know. Some of them I'm aware of, some I'm not. But I'm not writing a book about these things, about these topics.
Okay. So it's fantasy.
Yes.
My favorite genre.
Nice. Maybe I'll send
My
you the
favorite
draft. Tell
genre.
me what you think.
I would love that, man. I would love that. I feel like, especially with writers, it is so difficult to find people. Maybe I don't know. Maybe easier on your end, but on my end, it is so difficult to find people who are interested in reading your drafts, being beta readers. It is difficult to find someone that wants to read it and
That
read it
that
and
sucks.
take what you want to take from it. So it is difficult, man.
Feedback is such a powerful thing, and in video games as well. We demo our game every year to like insiders, and just everything people tell us has helped us so much just refine and make that experience better for when it comes out.
Okay.
It's so feedback is so hey y'all give honest feedback to your homies. Do it,
Please do. Especially your
please,
writer friends. Actually, all your creative friends.
all
Please
of
give
them,
honest feedback.
and then look at what they make, and that'll inspire you. So have the courage to be inspired, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
As a model, what would be like one thing you would tell people to do to improve their life, their looks, their whatever? Like something you've learned that is like, just do this every day. It's the simplest thing in the world, but you didn't think about it until now.
I would say find ways of improving your own niche.
Okay.
And bring in doing that, you will continually bring value to yourself. I think modeling, just like any other industry, is based on perceived value, and I say perceived because I think it's really, there's no constant or standard to what one person may view valuable as opposed to someone else. But there's market value, and the best thing you can do is to raise your value by finding your own and improving your own niches. For instance, I think everyone can see I'm a component of hair. I'm sure Wolfgang is also a component. Someone who encourages hair, and it was very difficult for me to get jobs early on, because there's, it's not viewed as valuable in the market. So I had to find ways of raising my own value, whether that meant like working with photographers in South Africa, shooting in Egypt, shooting in Beijing, which are things that I had to do to raise my value, so that I could break this stereotype of like what a model that looks like me looks like, and what jobs they should get. I had to improve my own niche, and I don't know how much longer I'm gonna keep my hair, but it's I'm gonna keep rolling with it as long as I got it. I would
how
say just try to improve your niche.
how do you apply this metaphor to like everyone, even people who aren't models?
Oh man, that is a great question. Find out what makes you unique and expand on that, because
Hmm.
there's something that you can bring that no one else can, whether it is in any space. Find your niche, find what makes you unique, and improve on that. I think that is pretty universal, man. So if we got 10 minutes for like final thoughts, what would you want to recap or say?
Hmm. I would like to ask you the question I ask everyone in some manner that I encounter, which is what gets you out of bed?
Hmm. What gets me
What
out of
gets you out
bed?
of bed creatively? Why the fuck do you create the things that you create?
I think there are there are things that are in me that are meant to save other people. And that just means this doesn't just go for me. I think it goes for just about anyone who has some type of like creative intuition or desire to create something. There is some aspect of that is tied to saving someone else. It doesn't matter the capacity or the magnitude, but it's going to save somebody else. It's going to have a magnificent impact on someone else. And for me, I can't die with that in me because who else will bring it out? And as morbid as that sounds, it always keeps me inspired to continue to find different mediums and methods and methodologies to bring those things out of me and hopefully inspire someone else to do just the same. I think that is what gets me out of the bed creatively.
That's
Definitely.
beautiful. That is beautiful.
I even think about this podcast, man. It's just I hope it continues to grow.
Oh, it will in its own way. It's, part intuition, part allowing it to become its own beast. When we're in here recording, I feel we don't control ourselves. That's the universe speaking through us, and this Thought Pantheon podcast being exactly what it needs to be.
I wish we had more time.
That is fine. So to recap, be aware, understand your passions,
Right.
and then build up upon those.
And take that leap.
And take that leap.
Take that leap.
Thank you for taking that leap with me, Lawrence and Wyman. Welcome to the Thought Pantheon.
Man, we got to do this more often, man. Even just regular conversation.